Hello there, everyone. Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is February the 25th, 3:35 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. It looks like we had some glitch with the streaming software, so I had to recreate the session. So maybe you are seeing an additional live stream session. Hopefully, you're going to be finding the right one. I don't see any participants. My concern is that we have participants trying to check the prior scheduled live stream. Let's wait a little bit, and hopefully participants are going to find the right session. I can see we have a couple of participants already. As usual, if you are a live stream participant, you have a priority in terms of asking questions. If we don't have any questions from the participants, we're going to check our pool of questions and address such topics. All right? All right, so here we have a question. Can you please share with us like the main reasons why a property would not qualify for the Brazil real estate investment visa? Yes, so there are, in our experience, a little over 10 reasons why a property, or better saying a transaction, would not qualify for the investment visa. Let me go over a couple of them. The first one is that the property must have a legal valid deed, right? So whenever you are evaluating a prospective property, the first thing is for you to ask for a copy of the legal deed, and have an attorney to review this deed to make sure it is actually a deed. Not surprisingly, some sellers, they are going to provide you a bunch of papers saying that this is a deed, but you need an attorney to review and to confirm that this is a valid deed. It's very common, even for Brazilians, like who may have bought a few properties or even several properties over the course of their lives, to believe that the escritura, it's a deed, but the escritura is not, let's say, the title or the final deed. Escritura in Brazil is the deed of sale. So when you buy the property, when you're attending the closing, you're going to be handling the deed of sale. This is the deed that's going to, convey the ownership from the seller to you as the buyer. But that's not the document that you're going to need to present when applying for the investment visa. You're going to need to present the final deed or the title, which in Portuguese we call Registro Geral do Imóvel. And if you're buying properties in Florianópolis, for instance, or this is also very common in the Northeast or the north of the country, and you ask for the deed, instead of providing with the Registro Geral do Imóvel, the seller could potentially send you the escritura, which is the deed of sale. And that's, the deed of sale is not the same thing as the final deed or the title. And therefore, again, you must have an attorney reviewing the paperwork to make sure you do have the correct version. Another reason why a property or a transaction would not qualify is if the property is showing bare land. Again, in the Northeast, it's very common. You're going to buy a beautiful property, by the beach, And eventually this property could have the legal deed or the title, the correct version. But unfortunately, on the deed is not showing the construction. It's just showing the bare land. And if you use this deed to apply for the residency, for the real estate investment visa or residency, you're not going to get it because there is a requirement that you must buy urban property and urban property with a construction on it. So you not only need to have a legal deed, but you also need a deed that shows a construction property on it. Another common question is like, how do I know if the property is rural or urban? Would a property like an hour away from Salvador, Bahia would qualify? And, it's not like by the location that you're going to know if it is an urban or rural property. It's actually by the type of tax that this property is paying. Urban properties, they are going to pay property tax to the municipality in which they sit. And rural properties, they are going to pay a different type of tax directly to the federal government. Because of this reality of the taxation, usually municipalities, they are going to try to encompass more properties than otherwise, so they can receive the taxes instead of the owner of the property paying taxes to the federal government. So luckily, whenever you are closer to a city, even if not in the city itself, there is a substantial chance that you're going to have a property qualifying as urban property. And therefore, there is always a chance that the property is going to be urban instead of rural. Nowadays, rural properties are those that are really detached from any type of, village or center. They are like, almost like a farm. And for those cases, these properties are not going to qualify for the investment visa. One more common mistake that we see happening with foreign citizens when they buy the property is like how they send the money. Sending money to Brazil, it's a pain in the neck, as you probably know. And it's very common for people to say, well, I don't know how to send, like I sent, but the money never arrived, the money was sent back. And then they're going to complain a bit, and then they're going to, end up sending money through TransferWise, or nowadays it's JustWise or Remitly. There are other apps, and the apps, they are going to allow you to send up to $10,000. The problem with the apps is that they are not going to give you a currency exchange contract, which is usually required for the visa application. Therefore, despite all the headaches of sending money to Brazil formally through the bank system, that's what you need to do. And we do assist with the currency exchange, not only for our clients who are hiring us to handle the entire transaction, but also to assist with the currency exchange part only. Okay, so I hope this gives you an idea about the reasons why a property or a transaction could not qualify for the investment visa. I see we have several participants. I don't see questions coming in. I told at the beginning of this live stream there was an issue with our live stream software, and we had to recreate the session. I am afraid maybe if you're trying to chat and if the questions are not coming in, there may still be some issue. If you can type your questions or topics of interest, I would appreciate if you could enter something in the chat window now, so I know that our participants are able to participate, right? If you could do that now, I see we have several participants because I see here the concurrent viewers. There is a substantial number of them, but I don't see anything in our chat window, unfortunately. All right, I see here. I just refreshed the chat too, and I see here Donna. Good day, welcome Donna again. I know that Donna is working towards a visa for Brazil. Donna, I don't recall if it is the retirement visa. If I'm not wrong, it is the retirement or the digital nomad. Am I right, Donna? Let me know. And all the other participants that I see here, if you wanna participate, again, our live streams always give a priority to the participants. If I don't hear from the participants, then I'm gonna address one of the questions we have here in our backlog. Okay, let's answer this question from our backlog. I know you said that there was some type of change with the Brazil retirement visa. Can you explain again what the change was? So yes, there was a change we identified, like in the it was probably for applications being reviewed between December of 2023 and last month. And the change is something like this. Before the change, we would be able to get retirement visa applicants approved with just criminal records, like from a municipality or state level, for instance, in the U.S., which means the Brazilian immigration was more lenient when reviewing criminal records. There was up to December. From December on, we see that the Brazilian immigration is pretty attached to the fingerprint FBI background check, which is a pain in the neck if you are not in the U.S., right? If you are in the U.S., it's super easy. You just go to one of the literally thousands of agencies across the country, and you can get this fingerprint, FBI background check done in probably like 30 minutes, right? Like you attend the station, 30 minutes, they take your fingerprints, they're going to use a digital scanner. So at least, again, if you are in the U.S., there is no need for you, to use real ink, for the paper-based application. In the U.S. is super common for entities such as IdentoGo to provide, the fingerprint collecting step, and later on to handle the application for the background check on your behalf. IdentoGo, for some reason, they don't offer this service in every single state. So usually it's a hit or a miss, but I'm just mentioning about IdentoGo as a reference, right? Like if you just check, FBI background check service, you're gonna find, I'm sure, a few agencies closer to your address in the U.S. Again, the problem is, up to December, you could have pretty much any type of criminal record. So many of our clients, like if they were in California, they would go to the county. If they're in the county of Los Angeles, for instance, or different county, Oakland, they could just go to the county and do like a request for a criminal records check. They would have something as a PDF showing their name, showing the name of the county, and showing that no records were found. And this would be enough for the retirement visa. But since December, you must have, if you are from the U.S., the FBI background check. We do have a service provider who works with us whenever a client hire our services. That's going to allow the applicant, even if the applicant is in Brazil, to secure the FBI background check. And because it does take a number of steps, it's part of our service when you are using our services for the retirement visa. Okay, so that was the main, I think the main change. The second main change is that they are also asking for an apostille on the retirement paperwork. So before they would ask for the apostille only on the birth certificate, now you need the apostille on the FBI background check. You're going to need an apostille on your birth certificate, and you're going to need an apostille on your retirement paperwork. And by the way, Donna just wrote over here, retirement visa. Yes, Donna, so I remember correctly. And as a coincidence, like I'm answering a question about the changes that happened over, the last couple of months for the retirement visa. So this information is helpful for you as well. So apostille, again, for the birth certificate, for the criminal records, and for the retirement paperwork. On the retirement paperwork, it looks like they are being more demanding in terms of the paperwork. Before December, they would be more lenient in terms of the paperwork. Now, what we are providing for our applications is the first thing is going to be a statement for your retirement account. Okay, so if you have, for instance, like Social Security, if you have like pension funds, it does not matter the type of retirement income that you have. You need to provide a statement showing, how much you're getting per month, how much in taxes are being taken out of the money, how much in net terms you're getting from the retirement account. And of course, you need to identify the retirement account as well. So for the military, like for veterans, usually there is a single page that the retirement account is going to show every single piece of information that the Brazilian immigration is gonna want to see. For other sources, there may be multiple pages. And if you have a question in terms of whether the document that you have is going to qualify or not, then you can either schedule a consultation with us so we can do some screen sharing. You can show what you got. Or, of course, you can also hire our service. So we're going to assist you on every single requirement for the retirement visa and make sure your application is in good shape for an approval. So these were the main changes for the retirement visa that we saw happening. And since the new administration, the new federal administration in Brazil took power, it was at the beginning of last year. As you probably know, there are ongoing changes. As far as we can tell, some clients, they get concerned. They say, well, but, like I'm in the process of buying real estate. What if they, get rid of the investment visa? We don't think this is going to happen. This administration, probably just like any other administration, they are always craving more money for whatever they want to do with the money. And the reality is, the investment visa is bringing a ton of money to Brazil. So we don't think that they are going to get rid of any of those visas that were created by the prior administration. However, they are doing some minor tweaks, just like those minor tweaks I spoke or I mentioned about the retirement visa. So for the investment visa, for instance, we see as probable that eventually the new administration is gonna increase the qualifying amount. And it doesn't sound like a bad idea, or another way of saying it is like it does make sense, because the 1 million reais for most of the country and 700,000 reais for the Northeast and the North, these amounts, they are in place since 2018. And we all know that there was like a huge inflation in between, particularly during COVID, in which governments started to print money like crazy, particularly the U.S. And the inflation, or like money lost power, and we can tell by the prices, probably not by the official inflation rates that we see published. But when you buy stuff, you know that you're paying probably at least double of what you used to pay back in 2018. So from a common sense perspective, the government could very well say, listen, things now cost double. I'm just going to say that instead of buying a property for 1 million reais, now I want, prospective visa applicants to buy a property for 2 million reais. So that's a real possibility, and that's the kind of changes we expect for the Brazilian immigration framework. I hope that was helpful. I see we have other participants, not many participation in the chat though. That's absolutely fine. If you just want to hear about the news, that's fine as well. Another a change is now the requirement that U.S. citizens, as well Australians and Canadians, get the e-visa. Okay, the e-visa is a promise from the new administration campaign. They said, you know what, reciprocity, if if they want Brazilians to get a visa, guess what? We're gonna make their citizens to get a visa as well. We discussed it like ad nauseum, like so many times, about why I particularly don't think that makes much sense. But the point is, after being postponed for 3 times, it looks like that the e-visa requirement is gonna indeed go into effect as of April the 10th. And of course, you should not wait until 10 days before the enforcement date to apply. Because there may be a lot of other people just thinking, well, I'm gonna wait until the last minute to see if they're not gonna postpone for the 4th time, and then if they don't, then I'm gonna apply. But then the problem is like there's gonna be a boatload of people applying, shortly before the e-visa requirement goes into force. And you could be risking waiting for up to 30 days to have your visa application reviewed. And for you to understand why that would happen, the reason is the e-visa platform is provided by a private third party, but this private third party, they don't approve the visa applications. Basically, they just relay whatever you are uploading to the e-visa platform. They are going to relay, they are going to route those applications to a consulate, or the ministry hired personnel to review the visa applications. In other words, they're going to be like real physical individuals reviewing those applications. And the more applications you have, of course, like the longer it's going to take for them to review. We are seeing, at least as of now, a waiting period of just a week. But again, like we're talking about, February, and the e-visa enforcement is scheduled for April the 10th. So once we get closer to the enforcement date, I'm sure, like the volume of applications is gonna increase exponentially, and so will the time that you need to wait to get the visa, right? So our recommendation is like we believe this time the e-visa is gonna finally fly, right? And if you have any travel plans for April, June or July, you should get the e-visa sooner than later. A good thing about the e-visa is that for U.S. citizens, this e-visa is going to be good for 10 years. Okay, so if you're going to fly, if you're going to travel, even like in the second semester, there is nothing precluding you. There is nothing precluding you from getting this visa, ahead of time. So when the time comes for your trip, you don't need to worry about getting the visa. In terms of requirements, the requirements are mostly a copy of your passport, a copy of a picture in the traditional 2x2 format. They want to see, itinerary for your trip. It could be a reservation, okay? It could be a reservation, at least from our experience with such applications. And the fourth requirement is to show that you have at least $2,000 in your bank account for your trip, okay? It's a kind of pro forma requirement, right? Like if you're going to travel, I don't know, like a year down the road or 6 months down the road, $2,000 in your bank statement today, it doesn't mean much, but it is what it is, right? Like they need some type of reasoning or some type of rationale to evaluate applicants, and that's what they are going to be doing. Something very important for applicants to know: if you have a dual citizenship, if you are also Brazilian, right? Like there's so many clients in this type of situation. They live in the U.S., right? They happen to have, parents in Brazil, and for some reason they acquired the Brazilian citizenship. They were either born in Brazil or their parents applied for the Brazilian passport when they were a child, and now they're Brazilians, right? Like without a choice, they never chose to be Brazilians. And of course, they identify themselves as U.S. citizens. And, ideally, they don't want to handle, the whole bureaucracy and red tape and nonsense to get a Brazilian passport. So they would love to be able to use the e-visa. But guess what? If Brazilian immigration realizes you are also a Brazilian, they are not going to allow you to apply for the e-visa. And the reason for that is that they want you to take care of a roughly dozen document requirements in Brazil. It does not matter if you've never been in Brazil before. They still want you to go through this ordeal. And it is an ordeal. Unfortunately, the consulates, they say, well, you can do that in a couple of months. We know people who have been trying to get all of those documents required for them to issue a Brazilian passport for a couple of years, right? So it's a big challenge. And the way it works, just for you to understand why this is such a pain in the neck. Like when you try to travel to Brazil and you have a dual nationality, first thing they say, you cannot travel on your U.S. passport. You need to use your Brazilian passport. But then you don't have a Brazilian passport because the one you got when you were a kid, this passport is expired now. But then you say, all right, so I want to renew my passport. And then they're going to say, well, you need a Brazilian tax ID known as a CPF. But then when you try to get the Brazilian tax ID known as a CPF, they're going to say, well, To get the Brazilian CPF, you need a voting ID, a voting ID. Never mind that you never voted in Brazil; they want you to get one. But when you go get one, guess what? They are gonna ask you for either a valid Brazilian passport, which you don't have, and that's the whole reason for getting the documents in the first place, or a Brazilian ID known as RG or the CNH, which is our driver license, which you don't have as well. So it becomes this kind of catch-21 in which people are trying to understand which documents they can get, but once they try to get those documents, they need to get other documents, right? It's a very sad situation for Brazilians. But the point here is, if you are a U.S. citizen who, on your passport it shows that you were born in Brazil, the Brazilian immigration is going to realize you have a dual nationality, and you cannot apply for the e-visa, unfortunately. All right. Another interesting distinction, although the e-visa is good for U.S. citizens for 10 years, for Canadians and Australians, for some reason, the e-visa is going to be valid for just 5 years. So roughly, like half the time allowed for U.S. citizens. And there are other interesting aspects of the visa. The application in theory, you can do it online, and it's not super complex, but it's far from friendly. One of the challenges we see in the e-visa application platform is that whenever you are applying, you are asked for a bunch of documents that have no relation to your application, and there are no instructions explained why they are asking for those things. So in our experience, as long as you have, again, the passport picture, itinerary for your trip, meaning it could be like a flight reservation, and you need both ways. It cannot be just like the first leg of your trip. And the fourth requirement is going to be the bank statement showing at least $2,000 available for the trip. But when you are applying, this interface, it's going to show a bunch of fields, like, a letter of employment. Is going to show, a bunch of other fields that have no connection to your case, and to make things even more, confusing, there is no field for your bank statement, right? So you need to attach, at least as of today, you need to attach as other documents. Okay, so we have many clients who are actually coming to us and say, listen, can you just handle this thing for me? I don't want to have to learn about Brazilian immigration to complete the e-visa application. Okay, but bottom line is, as long as you upload those 4 documents, you may also have some headaches when uploading the documents. A couple of recommendations. First one is convert the documents into PDF. That makes easier for the system to accept, and remove backgrounds. Okay, remove backgrounds, particularly if you're taking pictures. In theory, you are not supposed to use pictures. Like, you should instead, have a color scanned version of your document. But I think nobody's going to go to a FedEx store or a UPS store to get a scanned document. I mean, it's much easier for you. Like if you have an iPhone or an Android, which I believe it's like probably 99% of the applicants, you could basically download a software such as Turbo Scan, and there are other similar versions. Some of them, they are free, but the problem with the free version is that, guess what? They're gonna add like, this thing was generated by a turbo scan free version, right? Like, and then immigration sees it, and then they are not going to allow you to use. But if you have a paid version of the turbo scan app, and I think it's like $5, you can basically take a picture of your passport, and it's going to make it look like it was scanned, right? And you can remove the background, for instance, so it's going to look like pretty clean. And still color, right? Like it's a scanned version, a color scanned version. And then you can upload this document and get your e-visa approved. Okay, so here, these were some tips on the e-visa front. It looks like we're still with some issues with the live stream. The only participation I had so far, it was from Dana. And I can see by the number of viewers, like for this number of viewers that we have right now, usually we would have at least 10 people participating in the chat. So I can tell for sure something is not working right, but it is what it is. I'm going to make sure we are in better shape for the next live stream. Let me see if there are anyone able of, writing topics of your interest in the chat window. Now is the time. I'm going to see if I have a couple of additional questions from our backlog. But if I see that, unfortunately, people are not able to participate and add their topics of interest in the chat window, I think we're gonna finish up this live stream a little bit earlier, and again make sure things are working fine for our next live stream that's gonna take place on Wednesday, February the 28th, and this is gonna be a live stream at 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. All right. We have Captain Morgan. If you have a house in a land trust, will you need to pay taxes in Brazil if you live there? Captain Morgan, yes. That's an interesting question. There was a change in taxation, and that's the same thing for Brazil or the US. Every year you have new rules on like taxation updates, okay? And basically, Brazil has started to chase people with trusts in the U.S. Okay, so until last year, like a trust was a separate entity, Brazil would kind of say, well, it's a trust, it's not a person. And an additional factor is that Brazil does not recognize by law trusts. There is a bill in Congress for Brazil to have something similar to a trust, and interesting enough, like the bill in Brazilian Congress actually says trust. So just like so many other things, Brazil is gonna borrow this term from the U.S., right? Like it's gonna be a trust. But as of today, Brazil does not recognize trusts, at least when you're trying to buy assets in Brazil with a trust, or when you want to have a trust conducting transactions in Brazil. But guess what? If it is for the purpose of taxation, Brazil is going to give a thumbs up, and Brazil is going to say, I love trusts. I don't believe in trusts, but I'm going to tax your trust. So yes, Captain Morgan, like the technical answer to your question is, if you have a house in a land trust in the U.S., I guess, you would need to pay taxes, not on the land, right? Like you don't pay. Brazil does, just like other countries. Like there's no tax on assets. You would pay taxes on the income arising from this house in the trust, because the trust has this house. The house is generating, let's say, short-term or regular term rental income, and this income would be taxable, right? But not the asset. Like there's no such a thing as asset tax. There is the income tax on the income that's being generated by the house that is sitting inside the trust. Okay, Captain Morgan. Now, as this thing is recent, like there is always, what the law says and what people are going to be doing. The vast majority of accountants in Brazil, and I believe it's over 99%, okay, they have no clue about how to handle a tax return for a foreign citizen in Brazil with income abroad. It's not uncommon, believe it or not, for accountants in Brazil. They don't even know that the person needs to pay a tax on their global income, right? Like they say, well, this is new to me, okay? So I would say people capable of handling a tax return for a foreign citizen living in Brazil, it's probably going to be 0.1%, if much, right? 0.1% of the accountants in Brazil, they would be capable of understanding such nuances. So, the law says, yes, let's tax the trust income, but, I'm not sure how many accountants they are up to date. Probably those who are, of course, working with foreign citizens on a more continued basis. They are going to be looking for such updates. But again, the vast majority of accountants, they are not prepared to handle tax returns for foreign citizens living in Brazil. Denzil Mason, what's the running order for a resident visa based on moving to Brazil as British citizen to be with a future Brazilian spouse? All right, resident visa. Okay, so I assume you are marrying a Brazilian national. And for a foreign citizen to acquire residency based on marriage, right? You would need to secure either marriage or common law marriage, which in Brazil we call união estável or stable union, which is very graphic, like stable union, right? But for most countries you're gonna call it common law marriage. So it could be either common law marriage or traditional marriage. And first you need to marry, and then the marriage is going to be the main document that you're going to be presenting. There is a bunch of other documents you're going to need to collect up front. For instance, your birth certificate with an apostille, criminal records with an apostille, and you need to be in Brazil when physically applying. So we like to think that you would start to collect the documents like a couple of months before your moving date to Brazil. And the reason for the 2 months is so you have enough time, because you don't know, like it's something new to you until you understand the requirements. You're going to need to get a apostille. You're not going to do this legwork by yourself. You need to secure a service provider. For our clients, we usually recommend a specific service provider. So we basically tell you, listen, you're going to use this agency to get your document and to obtain the apostille and to give it back to you, right? So if you are our client, you don't need to learn the ropes. Like we're going to give you step by step. But roughly, again, 2 months before moving to Brazil, you start to collect the documents. You move to Brazil. Once you get to Brazil, there are some documents that you're going to need to obtain in Brazil, and then you're going to be in a position to file for the residency. One thing very important, like the marriage certificate, if you are married abroad, there are steps to legalize this marriage certificate abroad. It could be done through an apostille or a Brazilian consulate. And when you arrive in Brazil, you're going to need to re-record this paperwork in a local registry, which we call Registro Civil de Pessoas Naturais, which translates roughly as like a civil registration for physical persons, like in opposition to legal persons. By legal persons, like we call it a company. In Brazil, we call a legal person, right? In opposition to a natural or physical person, which would be an individual. Okay, Denzel, you may want to set up a consultation, then we can go over your specifics and get you a plan, at least time-wise, for you, to prepare and apply for the residency. Captain Morgan, if I buy an apartment in Brazil and live there half of the year, and my Brazilian girlfriend live there all year, will she be entitled to half the house through common law marriage, right? I mean, if she lives there in your property, right, for a year, right, or for that matter, any period of time, I would say she would have a very good claim, but I want to highlight, Captain Morgan, that she doesn't need to even live in the apartment, okay? If you guys are in a long-term relationship, even if she doesn't live in your apartment in Brazil, usually there could be a claim that you are in a common law marriage, and she doesn't need to live in your apartment, right? Like a common law marriage in Brazil nowadays is pretty similar to a regular marriage, and in Brazil, there is this presumption that any assets acquired during the course of the marriage are going to be common property. So let's say if you are in a relationship with a Brazilian girlfriend for 5 years, right, and 2 years down the road. So you're starting the relationship today. 2 years from today, you buy an apartment. And by the way, the apartment could be in Brazil, it could be in the US, it could be in Europe, it could be in Mars. If it is in the course of a common law marriage, in theory, she would be entitled to half of the property. Because for Brazil, nowadays, common law marriage, which is the união estável, or informal marriage, nowadays in Brazil is the same thing as marriage. There's no difference whatsoever, right? A judge is going to look at the common law marriage in the very same way that the judge looks at a regular marriage. So if you buy the property anywhere, and even if she doesn't know about the property, right? But eventually she files a claim 5 years from now, she files a claim and she says, well, we were in a common law marriage and now I want my share of the assets acquired during the course of this relationship. In theory, any assets, and it doesn't matter if she even knows about the assets, they would be attachable by a court of law in Brazil. Of course, if the asset is abroad, the court needs to know about the property. Otherwise, the court cannot, include this property abroad into the distribution of assets, right? But I hear your concern, Captain Morgan, and I wish I could say, don't worry, okay, but that's not the case. Unfortunately, Brazil has this type of, it's like, I don't know, it's something very typical of the Brazilian culture. Sometimes, the legislators, or better saying, the legal operators, they get carried away with some new theses, and they don't stop. They just keep going. And when you look at this thing, like you say, well, it doesn't make much sense. But, who am I, right, to say that whatever is being decided by the Brazilian judiciary is not right? Okay, I'm here to share how it works, and don't shoot the messenger, okay? But I think, like this common law marriage in Brazil, it got to a point in which it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense, okay? I'm going to tell you something which is, I think it does convey this point of, that the common law marriage is getting to becoming something of a nonsense, right? If you have like a regular marriage, you can have the prenuptial agreement and you can protect yourself. Now, if you don't do anything, like you don't marry, you don't do a prenuptial, and eventually you are found in a common law marriage, the rights that the common law marriage partner is going to have are potentially more than what a partner under a regular marriage would have, right? So that makes zero sense, right? Like, how can you say that for someone who never decided to marry, that this person is going to have more obligations than the person who took the step to correctly marry? It makes zero sense, but that's something very Brazilian, and it's happening in other legal instances as well. Like that's what I call, like the legal operators in Brazil getting carried away, and instead of going to a certain point and say, well, this is enough. There's going to be a competition to see who's going to come up with the more like extreme vision of that particular trend. And by the way, such trends are usually going to come from the US, and then the Brazilian legal operators, they're going to look at that trend and they're going to say, well, I'm going to bring you this trend. I'm going to bring you this trend, to my friends, to other legal operators, and I'm going to look cool, right? And then, but again, they don't want to just, introduce the trend. They want to introduce the trend and then take a step beyond, like whatever it was created in the US as a new legal trend. And then sometimes you see, or I would say probably most of the time you see, exaggerations, like like getting to a point of nonsense. Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful. We're gonna end our live stream in a couple of minutes. Denzio Mason, thank you very much. Thank you, Dazon, for participating. Maybe it was your first live stream. I know Captain Morgan has been with us for a while. Hope to see you again, Captain Morgan. Donna is participating here in our live stream. She's participating with a very interesting questions in our videos as well. Thank you, Donna. You are helping the retirees with your questions, and I hope to see you guys on Wednesday. Again, our next live stream is going to be on Wednesday, the 28th. It's going to be at 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. Usually on Wednesdays, we have less participants, which is understandable. Usually people are busy on Wednesdays, right? Like middle of the week. But again, I apologize for the issues we had with the live stream software. There were glitches at the beginning of the live stream. We were not receiving the chat messages. We had to recreate the session, and this may have caused problems for some of the participants, but we're going to work to have this fixed for the 28th. And then if you're not participating on Wednesday, remember, we're going to be here again on Sunday, March the 3rd. All right? So thank you very much, all of you. Hope to see you soon, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.